We thank you everyone for joining today's session and welcome to this special edition of our DHL Innovation Plug In. Once again, thank you for joining us today. We have a very exciting discussion in store for you as we talk about the role of innovation post-COVID-19. Before we begin our discussion, and while we are waiting, we'd like to take this opportunity to engage with you and feel the pulse. We know you're remotely located, whichever part you are in right now. Please launch your web browser or use your mobile phone and enter menti.com, enter the code 832137, or scan the QR code that's being flashed on your screen right now. Let's start off with the first question. We'd like to hear from you. What is your biggest challenge in the current environment? Is it keeping your supply chain functioning, or maybe future-proofing your existing supply chain, or even maybe keeping your employees productive and engaged? Is it about the safety of your employees' families and business teams, or is it about getting used to virtual engagements like this one? As we can see, it is about, we have 44% of our audience, and we would like to hear more from everyone. So please enter menti.com and type in the code 832137. What is your biggest challenge in the current environment? And I can see it's about keeping our employees productive and engaged. So keep on answering that, please. And we will take that in poll during the session. Okay, please keep on answering and we will get back to those results later on. Next question, please. How do you believe your business will look like after the crisis? Is it about, get your crystal ball and check what does it say? Is it about going back to normal or downsizing your business operation? Is that how your business could look like after the crisis? Or will you be exploring the new business model? Or will you be trading off costs to be more agile and resilient? Welcome again. For those who just joined in, please enter menti.com and type in the code. We appreciate your answer to this question as they will be discussed later on. So please type in and answer. So I can see that majority of the people of the business will be exploring new business model. That's very, very interesting input. And we will ask our panelists later on if their crystal ball also says the same. Right. So please go to the next one. The next question is, do you think innovation will play a key role in bridging between the now and your supply chain goal? Are you the ones who do not know yet how innovation can help? Or perhaps you are in a survival mode at the moment and you haven't thought of a budget or even the time to think about innovation. Or maybe you'll be interested or you are already interested to explore. Or is it a yes, an affirmative yes that you believe innovation is the need of the hour? And I can see that we have about 68% now of people thinking or believing that innovation can help. For those who just joined in, you can still answer these questions. Just enter menti.com and type in the code 832137. Thank you for your valuable insights. Please keep that answer going. If you have missed it out, just enter menti.com and we'll take these results into our discussion with the panelists later. Before we formally begin, kindly mute your phone and we encourage you to join in the discussion. So if you have any questions, feel free to type in the Q&A at any time and I will look at that. It is on my screen right now and I'll be watching any questions that you want to ask our panelists. As lockdowns are relaxed and businesses are also slowly waking up to what most researchers call the new normal, the world will be looking not just in new things, but most importantly, in the new ways of doing things. In this fireside chat, we'll discuss what the new normal could look like in the supply chain. We'll also take a closer look at DHL Global Forwarding and how they adapted to support the customers. And finally, we'll look at the trends and where innovation could play a key role in the new normal. So joining us in today's discussion, we begin with Fred. Fred is the Vice President and Research Director from Forrester Research. And he'll paint the picture of what the new normal could look like and the future trends that will accelerate post-COVID-19. Welcome, Fred, and thank you for participating.
Thank you
Fred,
for having me.
Yes. How many webinars have you actually participated in as guest speaker in the last 2 months since the lockdown?
Too many.
Too many to count.
I think there's been spikes at about 8 per week, but now we have reached a cruising altitude of maybe 2 or 3 per week. So I think it's a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, okay, you got used to this virtual engagement, but thank you for gracing our discussion for today. Okay, to give us insights on the role of innovation to seize the upside and provide practical tips on how we should approach innovation, we have Matthias, the Head of Innovation and Commercial Development at DHL Customer Solutions and Innovation. Matthias, you've been traveling a lot before COVID. Where do you think you will travel to first once the travel restrictions have been lifted?
Actually, good morning. So actually, I'm traveling to Berlin on Monday. That's a huge highlight. It's a short travel, but that's my first travel. And then I think hopefully either I will travel to Singapore or to Chicago to see you guys or the team in Chicago at the Innovation Center, depending on I think which country opens up first. So that's probably will be my first proper trips.
Yeah, we definitely miss you here in Singapore, so we will welcome you once the travel restrictions lifted. Right, thank you, and we'll talk soon. Last but not least, Piak is our Senior Vice President of Marketing and Sales from DHL Global Forwarding Asia Pacific. He will give us business and customer insights and pulse in the operation. I do know that Piak has just recently visited his customers on site. So Piak is located in China and will take interest on what it's like on the ground. Hi, Piak, and now that you're back in the office, do you prefer working from home or from office?
Oh, I would say it's a mixture, right? When you work from home, you have the luxury of having a breakfast with your kids, your wife, before you go and proceed into work, right? But while we're back in the office, you have the opportunity to work with our colleagues. You can attend a face-to-face meeting with them. No, there's no replacement for face-to-face interaction in our business. And to me, I think it's a mixture. I find it good to be working from home, but not for too long. But it's also very good to be working from the office as well.
Fantastic. For our audience, if you have any questions, please type it in at any time in the Q&A panel in Zoom. Now, fantastic. Fred, based on our second results in the poll, they said that they will be exploring new business models in their businesses. What is your outlook for the supply chain industry post-COVID-19?
Yeah, thanks, Celeste. So, as we, prepare for this conversation, I think there's one important dimension that we need to look at, which is where are businesses located in this pandemic? And the way we like to think about it at Forrester is, through 4 phases. And if you go to the next slide, there's a, as you said earlier, across most countries in Asia Pacific, we are entering phase 3. Where employees are getting back to work and companies are starting their operations. But I wanted to come back on what happened in phase 2 during the lockdown and during the social distancing period, because there's a couple of lessons three actually that I think we need to take into consideration for this conversation. The first one is that there was a phenomenal amount of disruption from a supply chain perspective, and the disruption is supply chain, but all across all the different business operations, all the different business functions, and companies in Asia had business continuity plan in place. Also covering supply chain, but the large majority of companies have been caught off guard by the amount, the scale, and the speed of disruption, which was phenomenal. The second point is that we've seen working with our clients is the fact that COVID-19 has been an accelerator for digital transformation and for innovation. It's quite interesting to see how companies have been thinking about change and how this change can be delivered when there's a sense of urgency, or what I would call a do or die mindset. I mean, it's been a fantastic driver of collaboration. We have seen a lot more collaboration happening, a lot more empathy, with leaders, and more shared accountability, and the drive to make decisions faster, to have innovation deliver result faster, which I think that's been quite interesting. And the third point is, we've seen winners and losers, and we've seen companies that had done a lot of the groundwork of digital transformation, heavy lifting, transforming their organizational structure, transforming their technology environments, many years before. And the key example, one of the examples I would like to mention today is Haier, who is, as you know, the largest white good appliance manufacturer globally, Chinese organization, but has been operating this massive transformation, business transformation initiatives for the past decade or more, covering organizational structure, technology platforms, and also its ability to leverage data. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about data and the critical role of data during this conversation. Data coming from some of the digital customer platforms that they have put together in order to detect demand, but also data that is coming from the entire ecosystem of partners, of suppliers, of manufacturing capabilities, and all this enable them to really get back to work and to reopen their full capacity very, very quickly, and much more quickly than most companies in China, which was quite interesting. But to go back to your question on the future and what's going to happen in phase 3 and 4, it's a tough question. I'm not sure, there's a lot of people who are able to answer this question, because we're stepping into uncharted territory right now. But there's one key question that I keep on hearing from our clients, which is, how do we make innovation and transformation at pace sustainable? I think the organizations have experienced something unique in the past couple of months in terms of speed of execution, in terms of innovation. And they are questioning, how can we keep that operating model alive and this sense of urgency alive over the next, in the future, right? In this new normal that you were talking about.
Thank you, Fred. I picked up that it's leveraging data and also keeping pace with what is sustainable moving forward in terms of innovation, and we are at adaptive mode at the moment. Thank you, Fred, for that one. And Piak, anything to add on the scenarios that Fred just described?
Well, Celeste, like Fred has correctly mentioned, right? This is a very difficult question to answer. But personally, my view is, I think that post-COVID, right, there will be companies that's looking at suppliers diversification instead of single sourcing from a single suppliers. I think people will start to look at to diversify their suppliers so that there's a lesser risk, right? And on top of that, I think they will also look at their manufacturing footprint. Now, I see customers that have a lot of manufacturing just focusing in China. Is that the correct strategy? I think a lot of companies will start to rethink that, right? Because when the initial phase of the COVID, whereby it's only hitting on China, I see a lot of customers that just have their supply chain fully disrupted because nothing can come out or go into China, right? So I think this is one area that they're very likely they're going to look at as well. And in terms of workforce, I think this is also one area that a lot of people is talking about. A lot of people is saying that in future there will be a very minimum face-to-face meeting, very minimum contacts, social distancing. But for me, that's sitting in China today, and I've been visiting customers for the past few weeks. Other than the frequent temperature check and multiple forms to fill, and of course putting on a mask when you see the customers, right? But to me, I think the new norm is something like the old norm. I think the face-to-face context is still going to continue, especially in places whereby it's very relationship-based, right? Like places like China, like India, like Korea. I believe the face-to-face thing will still go on. But I think there will be also more usage of digital tools, right? Like what we are doing today, using Zoom. People will use Zoom for some of the meetings. So the days of flying for 10 hours for a 2 hours meeting probably will be lesser and lesser, right? Then lastly, looking at our industry, I think there will be definitely more automation as well. At this moment, we are very labor-intensive industry, whereby there's also a lot of human-to-human contact, human-to-goods contact. I think in future, I think our warehouse operation, our last mile delivery, there'll be less human context that we're looking at. So I think these are the few areas that I think is going to change for supply chain post-COVID.
Fantastic, Piak. Thank you for that. I picked up from you, it's about suppliers diversification, the workforce, how to continuously engage with them. But on the other hand, you think that interaction with customers face-to-face will continue post-COVID-19, that you cannot remove. But then automation in terms of application to the operation will be even more important. Thank you. Matthias, now each regions are in different stages of recovery. What would be the supply chain focus dominantly on any region?
Yeah, I mean, maybe let me pick up on what Piak said. I think what we are seeing, what I thought is quite interesting also in the phases that Fred described, is that in this big crisis mode, I think many companies heavily invested in the infrastructure, mostly to enable digital work, right? People, I mean, like in our case, we had hundreds of thousands of people suddenly had to work from home, which even with a strong network, we were just, most companies weren't built up for that, right? In terms of just VPN infrastructure and others. So a lot of investment happened there, which to Piak's point, now I think companies will for that part, we will go back to for me, the new normal will be a healthy mix between digital and maybe home office, but still people and humans still want to have the person interaction as well. So I think there will be probably a healthier mix than before. But there's a lot of investment happened in that part. And I think what we are seeing is that before this new normal, we call it there's this pre-new normal phase. And I think there's really the question now, next to the digital work, are companies also taking the opportunity to take the same level of investment into their supply chain and operations, which to what Fred said on the case study he presented, companies who did that prior to the phase were much better prepared for it. And I think other companies seeing that now, and the question is now in the different regions, so what does it mean? And I think a couple of topics is certainly resilience will be a much more important topic than in some industries and some companies they already looked into. So really, how can we invest in a more resilient supply chain? And particularly if you look at transport networks and warehousing, I think particularly in Europe, there's a lot of discussion regarding more nearshoring again, which is not totally new, but I think we have been kind of realizing how dependent we are on certain products and goods, but also the flows. So that's, I think, there's certainly a rethinking in some companies. Not saying we are not driving globalization further, but how can we set it up in a way we are more resilient and more diversified in terms of supply, in terms of, but also, yeah, mostly in terms of supply, but also in terms of providing or keeping operations going. So digitalization and automation, not just in the, I would say the office work, what Piak described, but also actually in operations. So, so we are seeing that if you are investing now in more automation and more robotics, for example, you will be more resilient when something like COVID hits your operations in the future. So I think it's really those resilience, looking into optimizing the network in terms of nearshoring and other mechanisms, but certainly also driving more automation, digitalization in your core operations and business. And that, as to Fred's point, for me, involves you need to really know your business and have much better control over your data. So the whole topic on data stewardship and really figuring out how can we do that, I think that will be certainly a focus. And those companies who do that well will emerge much stronger from the crisis than those who don't.
Thank you, Matthias. I guess you talked about, digital workforce, and that's very interesting because it resonated in our first poll result when our audience answered that it's about keeping our employees productive and engaged, which is the biggest challenge in the current environment. We'll pick on that later on, perhaps. There will be questions coming in, elaborating further on that one. Now, let's quickly, we've talked about the potential scenarios of supply chain coming from all of you three. Let's take a closer look at the DHL Global Forwarding and understand how they are adapting to the new normal. Now, Piak, what challenges are you confronted with, even our customers, obviously, and do you look for new ways or approaches to solve these challenges?
Well, I think at this moment, the freight forwarding industry is actually facing a very huge challenge, right? I think this is not only DGF, to be fair. I think it's the whole industry. I think we have a serious lack of capacity that's in air freight. And this coupled with the huge demand of PPE transportation at this moment, home office equipment that Matthias already mentioned, people working from home, people are buying more laptops, iPads, and furnitures, and also a life science product. These are all a huge demand in this moment. And together with the lack of capacity, this is creating sort of like a capacity issue in the whole air freight industry. And because of this lack of capacity plus the huge demand, this is actually pushing the price to a level whereby a record level that we have not seen before. And we also face issues in countries or even finding drivers. Okay, in countries whereby there's a lockdown, people are scared, right? People are afraid to even go out of the house to drive and deliver the products. So this is the real life problem that we are facing as well. And for the ocean freight carriers, we are still seeing multiple what we call blank sailings, right? People are taking out capacity from the certain trade lanes, so that in order to manage the capacity. I think for this DHL, in a way, we try our best to manage the whole situation, right? We try to, at this moment, we try to innovate, and we try to even increase our own solution. So what we are looking at is we're really creating our own dedicated air freight networks in this moment. And from the very beginning of the crisis till now, right, we have managed to put on our own dedicated charter flights of more than 250 charter flights, serving US, serving Europe, and even serving intra-Asia as well, right? So this charter flight is helping us at this moment. And at this moment, we're also looking at multi-modal solutions. These are the solutions whereby it's not as fast as air freight, but when it comes to pricing, it's actually much cheaper than air freight, okay? So these are the in-between solutions that's helping our customers. So we are coming out with this style of solution in order to help our customers to control our costs and also ourselves to control the cost as well.
Okay, I understand from your answer that's how you approach your business, and yet basically you want to keep the cost manageable, and yet you continue to innovate to bring value to the customers. Fantastic. Now we do have a question from our audience. It says here, just hold on a sec. The airline industry has taken a very big hit from COVID-19, and some airlines even filing for bankruptcy. Now this has significantly impacted available air freight cargo space. How different do you think international freight will look after COVID-19, and where can innovation come in?
You're asking me, right?
Yes, Piak, of course, yes.
Okay. I think to be honest on this question, right? I think international freight will definitely continue, be it with pre-COVID and also post-COVID. As long as there's still demand and supply, people are still buying products and people are still manufacturing things. I think international freight will continue to be there, right? But like what you correctly mentioned, what we see during the COVID, right, where people are not willing to travel, a huge amount of passenger capacity has been taken out from the market. So what I see like the post-COVID, whereby people there will be lesser people that's willing to travel. That passenger capacity will come back to the market only in a very gradual phase, right? So in order to overcome these challenges, I would think that people will rely more on their dedicated sort of like their own charter programs in order to move the goods around from point A to point B. Then instead of relying on the scheduled leave that we are seeing in the market today, people will start to rely on their own capacity, right? Then on top of that, I think people will also look at other mode of transportation. In the past, people only look at you want fast, I go air freight. If I want it slow, I can afford it to be slower and in a huge quantity, I will just go on the ocean, right, and shipping lines. Okay, but I think in future, people will seriously look more into alternative mode of transportation, like railway from connecting from China, even Korea, Japan, even Vietnam, all the way into Europe. I think people will start to seriously look into that as a mode of transportation. And to serve the intra-Asia traffic, which today the capacity, the one is the one that are mostly impacted by this COVID, right? Because intra-Asia use a lot of passenger flights to fly the goods around, and with that capacity being cut massively, I think people will also look at really doing trucking, right? Using trucking to truck all the way from China all the way down into Singapore. And from there, maybe use to fly out from there, or even to use the ocean from Singapore to connect to other part of Asia. I think people will look into this multimodal solution as a more regular solution.
Fantastic. Thank you, Piak, for sharing on how DHL Global Forwarding has addressed the challenges and what you've done early on to deal with the crisis. For anyone who just joined in, we welcome your questions at any time, so you can type it in our Q&A panel. Now, Matthias, I'd like to turn to you. Can you identify use cases that could help our customers just understand where DPDHL has implemented innovative solutions to address customer challenges?
I mean, many things are either, as I said, it's more like what Piak said, it's reacting. And I mean, the question is, what do you call it non-innovative? In some cases, really just being agile and quick to react and, for example, put dedicated capacity in place and other things. But we also, for example, looking how can we take certain technologies and enable like social distancing in work by using variables or certain trackers or IT technology to also help our operations in terms of maintaining the social distances, for example. Right? That's one example. Or if you look at robotics, there are kind of quite a lot of opportunities there. But of course, you can't implement an automated solution from one day to another. So that's more of a journey. One area where we, I think, see a lot of activities actually in the area of visibility, really looking into how can we provide a better visibility and control over your network. And there, for example, I mean, many of you know the Resilience 360 solution that we have developed is really looking into providing visibility and resilience, which was actually developed based on when the earthquake in Japan happened some years back. So now again, that is something that certainly had experienced a lot more demand recently, but also just relatively simple enhanced track and trace visibilities solutions to make sure that because your supply chain is different from before and it's disrupted, you want to make sure you keep tracking visibility on your of your shipment. So it's really deploying their modern technologies like in terms of sensor technologies, but also IoT technologies to really make sure you can have a better control over your network. So that's what we're doing I would say, the immediate reaction, where we see a lot of applying some of the innovations in a broader scale. But now the next question is, in the next phase is, so how can we now really look into become more resilient by using, as I said earlier, more automation, more robotics in warehousing, but also in other operations.
Matthias, we do have a question from our audience. So I think this very much relates to what you just said earlier. In theory, everyone agrees that innovation is important, and we could see that from the poll result earlier as well. However, in reality, we know innovation involves time, effort, and cost. Where is the gap, and how do we bridge that?
Yeah, I think that's a typical kind of trade-off, right? So right now, as some companies are really financially significantly impacted, are probably lacking the funds to do, for example, automation projects. And as I said earlier, I think some companies are actually who are financially strong and can really now invest kind of ahead of that curve, will probably emerge much stronger from them crisis than other companies who can't do that. But innovation is not always just saying, hey, we fully automate our operation. There's a lot of things you can do, what Fred earlier said, in terms of data, visibility. That is not, I mean, it's not something that it creates a lot of effort and probably governance, but it's more about the commitment as a company, do we want to do it or not, and not necessarily the huge investment, particularly on data. I mean, the data stewardship topic and how to do that is a lot regarding, are we as a company committed to go down that path? And then I think that's the first important decision. Like, we're very similar to, are we willing to invest in the digitalization of our home office and kind of embracing that engagement with our employees? It's very similar on other topics. It doesn't always mean that you have to invest a lot of capital eventually. But I think the first step is really, are we committed as a company to go down that path? And then there's a lot you can do by also applying innovative ways of doing that. And I think data for me is just one great example.
Thank you very much. Yes, Fred,
I would agree
go ahead.
on that, and you know, probably challenge this idea that innovation takes too much time, effort, and cost. And I think that's one of the lessons that we learned from this phase 2 of the pandemic, is that, you know, companies were able to innovate, leveraging cloud solutions, doing, you know, very quick, you know, minimal viable products, testing different scenarios with low risk and you know, very little amount of resources. So I think, you know, that's probably one of the you know, ideas that we need to fight within our own organization, that indeed innovation involves time, effort, and cost. Yes, a little bit, but not as much as we can think about. I think there's quite a bit of you know, work that we need to do to change the mindset here.
Mm-hmm. We do have another question from the audience, and I think you are also free to answer this one. What is the strategy to bring digitalization and automation to your customers without increasing the cost burden and supporting your customers to manage the increasing pressure to reduce costs? So
my answer to that would be,
yes.
So my answer to that, I mean, I think we have to really look into it case by case with each customer, because every situation is different. And I think the first step is really to engaging, understanding. So what are the pain points? What are the topics we want to address? And then come up with really engaging with the customer. It's not saying there's not one size fit all, so everybody should do automation now. But it's really working with. Then I think where you are, what we have the innovation centers for, is really engaging with our customers to take them on that journey. So again, I can't say this is our strategy in general, but I would say our approach would be working with each customer to really understanding what the situation is, what the need is, and there are certain things like what Piak said. It's more like an innovation in providing capacity, which is something we can do, and then there might be some longer term topics in order to make the operations and the network more resilient. But the first step is really, let's have that conversation jointly to really understand what the needs are, the pain point and the risks, and then we can certainly find ways to do that. And the cost pressure, I think, is something that can probably be mitigated to that extent.
Yes, Matthias, I'll support you on that one, and we obviously welcome that dialogue here at the Innovation Center. We'll flash out later on the contact details of who you can reach out to, and obviously Matthias is also there. Connect with LinkedIn or to reach us via email later on that will flash out so that we can start the dialogue and understand your pain point, right? We do have, yes, Fred, Piak, yes.
Yeah, something to add on this, because I think a lot of people have this misconception thinking that innovation will always equate to cost. I think yes, in a certain way, innovation will cost money, but sometimes innovation is also important for the survival of the company. Because I would like to bring everyone back to the example that I mentioned just now about DHL Global Forwarding, right? Imagine we as a business model, we rely on scheduled leave from the carriers. And tomorrow we wake up early in the morning and we are told that passenger flight is no longer flying. So if we don't innovate and we don't create our own dedicated capacity to serve the whole industry, no products can move, and we cannot move anything at all. So I think in a certain way, right, like what Matthias has mentioned, sometimes innovation is forced. Okay, it's not natural, but we have to innovate. If we don't innovate and we just stay there, and probably the business model cannot go on, right? And we as freight forwarders, our job is to move product from point A to point B. And if we don't innovate and create our own capacity, our own charter flights, and we have no business model at all.
Fantastic, Jack. Thank you very much for that insight. We do have another question here. Innovation is often tied to investment, again, which is always a challenge for low-cost countries like India and Indonesia. Are there creative approaches to see innovation being applied despite the low labor cost challenges? And are there good innovation use cases where it is evasive for such low-cost countries?
I think it relates to what we said earlier, right? I mean, maybe just to add one point here. So one thing is certainly nobody would suggest that we would necessarily fully automate an operations in a low-cost country, right? It wouldn't make any economic sense. However, I think what we are seeing is that there's really, in the past, it was always mostly regarding cost improvement or maybe enhancing your customer experience when you talked about innovation. I think what we're seeing now, there's really a new KPI, which is resilience for innovation. So what I mean is that you're not just looking at what's the immediate return, but you're also looking into will this make us more resilient, and actually we can stay in business when something like the COVID-19 crisis happens again. So I think that there's more of a balanced view now on some of those investments. It's not just about the cost, but it's also about resilience. That's one part. But I think particularly in low labor cost countries, there are many ways you can improve your operations without necessarily fully automating it, for example, which comes back to the point we said earlier. So I think it's the same topic I think we just discussed.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just add on that, and I lived in India for 3 years, and there's one innovation concept in India which is called Jugaad, which is frugal innovation. And I think this is something that a lot of countries outside of India could learn from, because it's obviously the cost equation in India is going to be very different, but there are also approaches regarding frugal innovation that can be applied outside of India.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Fred. Now, let's quickly pause from here and ask our audience once again. So we'll flash out Menti again for the question. And we'd like to ask you, which trend do you think will accelerate in a contact-free economy? Is it digital commerce, telemedicine? We talked slightly about robotics and automation, visibility, so IoT, big data analytics that Fred, Piak, and Matthias has also mentioned. Which trend do you think will accelerate in a contact-free economy? If you have other questions as well, feel free to type in the Q&A section. And I see that it's digital commerce at the moment at 30% of the audience. Do answer that question, because we'll pick it up again later on in the conversation. Next question, which trend will you focus on to build a more resilient supply chain, not only to reducing costs, but also becoming more agile? Is it IoT, analytics, robotics, 3D printing perhaps, blockchain, or maybe we missed out other trends that you would like to explore? I can see at the moment that it's 34%. Please do answer that question and we'll pick that up again, the results later on. So I see earlier it's about digital commerce on a contact-free economy. And here there's obviously a first runner-up. It's the IoT that will be a trend to talk about resilience. All right, Fred, let's turn to you quickly. Which technology trends will become more significant for you and which ones will be put on the back burner? You already mentioned earlier about data.
Yeah, I want to go back to this data thing because you know, I mean, Matthias and Piak have shared a lot of really good examples of what innovation should look like from a supply chain perspective, focusing on end-to-end visibility or bringing in more resilience, more flexibility, more options like multimodal transport. Data is going to be critical, obviously, to make that that happen, that innovation happen. But I think starting with these big goals, business goals of transformation, is the first thing that organizations need to do. From a trends perspective, I think, I mean, I've picked three that I think are going to be important. The first one is, I think, an increasing reliance on what I call the innovation networks. Innovating within the borders of the enterprise, I mean, obviously that doesn't make any sense, right? So I think that we'll see, especially when we think about end-to-end visibility imperative, we will see stronger collaboration, data exchange, innovation across the entire supply chain ecosystems. I have one interesting example here in the shipping industry with OOCL and their subsidiary CargoSmart that have developed a global shipping business network leveraging blockchain technologies, and they're already experimenting with real-time exchange of shipment data in between the ocean carrier and the terminal operator, for instance. So that's the first one. The second one is around more specifically technologies. And here again, want to focus on data, three-dimension. How do you get accurate access to data, right? Sensors, you know, I think Internet of Things was one of the top areas in the previous poll. So I think I definitely see that as a key technology area around sensors, but also unstructured data with video or computer vision, for instance, that are going to be increasingly important. But also the technology platforms that will connect all these different sensors and all the different stakeholders, the participants in this supply chain, you know, that will be critical. The second point is around real-time or close to real-time analytics and how do you bridge insights to action. So it's not only the analysis, but also it's the action. And that's where, you know, technologies like AI, machine learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning are going to be very important, and automation as well. We talked about robotics before. And then the last one I think is important and will be increasingly important, which is how do you interface that data and the systems that are producing the data, the insights with humans, right? Because the challenge that we're going to see with all of this data is that you need to find ways to make these insights easily interpretable by humans, and humans to be able to interact with these insights as well. So extended reality, conversational interfaces, chatbots, I think are going to be playing a critical role to create this interface in between insights and human decisions, basically. And the third one, so that was the second trend, and the third one, which is more of a hope than anything else, but you know, COVID-19 has put health and sustainability on the front page like no other time before. So I think and I hope that sustainability will be higher on the priority of innovation agendas for organizations. But Piak, what you said about, you know, leveraging rail and other more sustainable means of transportation could be an interesting step in that direction.
Now, Fred, quickly on the sustainability part, do you think that would still take like 5 years, or it's going to be even shorter as the businesses accelerate in other areas, that it will work alongside their agenda to also look into the sustainability? Will that take long or even shorter than what it is?
Well, I think there are some imperatives, right? And Piak, again, I think gave some really good examples of the fact that, you know, if one mode of transportation is not available, like airlines, well, you're kind of forced to use things that are de facto more sustainable. So I think there are going to be some quick wins there. But again, the core transformation is going to take much longer.
Much longer. All right, good, fantastic. We'll get back to you on that. Again, for any other questions, feel free to type it in. We do have questions coming in, but I'll quickly check with Matthias. From your perspective, because you're looking, DPDHL looks at trends as well, forward looking, what are the trends that will come up and accelerate post-COVID-19?
Yeah, maybe if you can show the next slide. So I think one thing is I was really happy to see the results of the poll we just said earlier on, like IoT first and data second and automation third. I would probably turn around and say, I think analytics has to come first and then IoT. Because I think there's always this misconception, hey, we have to put a lot of more sensors and technology in, which is correct, but there's a lot of data already we can use without even adding any more hardware. That would be the only thing saying, hey, guys, let's really look at what you already have. And I think there's some good examples also maybe just relating to some of the questions earlier. If you look at optimizing a warehouse operations, you can of course put in automation, but there's also a lot you can do by using what Fred just said, by using new technologies and AI to optimize, for example, your waste planning and your labor planning within a warehouse. There's a lot that can be achieved by that in a first step before you even add any automation. So that's just something I think that is really important to have in mind. We always want to go for the fancy and shiny technology, but there's a lot we can do in the current setup already. So if you look at what Fred said on the trends, I think what we are seeing, there certainly is an acceleration of certain trends compared to before the crisis. I mean, robotics is just an interesting one. I think that now suddenly we are kind of exploring, can we use robots that have been used for other tasks, for like for cleaning and for disinfection. And you saw it in some countries, I think like Dubai and others, where they use drones to really also disinfect surfaces within cities. Which interestingly, and that's related to me also to the autonomous last mile. We always had in the past a limitation of regulations when it came to deploying like drones, and like in this case like Starship, which is a startup that does last mile delivery with robots. So some cities actually lifted and eased up those regulations in order during the COVID crisis. The question is that going to last? So are they tighten it back up again, or will they leave it open, which then would create a lot of more opportunities for autonomous deliveries and autonomous transport. So I think the jury here is still out if that lasts or not. Another great example, as I said earlier, is like the sharing economy. That for me is more about labor sharing, and even within our own operations, being able to shift employees between different locations in a smarter way to really make sure in the COVID situation where we had certain impacts by people being sick, we had to be very quick to react and really have a smarter system to manage our labor forces across the network. And I think that is something that certainly is going to last. So once we have understood that, and I think I like what Fred said earlier, is really this do or die, because it's amazing what people are capable of when they have to. So there's a lot of that innovation within the system happened. So that's certainly one sharing economy. I think that is going to nearshoring we already covered. I agree with 3D printing. I think that's probably something that, yeah, we had a couple of those opportunities happening, but I would agree with the audience that, yeah, we have seen a little bit of an increase there, but I think that's not going to be a big change. Nearshoring, I think people will really look into seriously now in terms of how can we make the whole setup more resilient by nearshoring production, stock management. But there's also like concepts like managed inventory and things like that probably will kind of reemerge. And next gen wireless, as you know, we just launched a new trend report on that topic, really looking into that technologies in terms of how can we use the next, not just 5G, but also other new technologies in the IoT space. And again, that is really driven by the need for more visibility and control. So I'm sure that's going to last. So a couple of these strengths, I think they're kind of just hype right now, but particularly I think on the managing our labor more smartly by visibility. I'm sure those are some topics that's going to last. The question on the last mile delivery, like drones and robotics, I think still out. So we will see if that is something that's going to last or not, but we certainly see a lot more activity here and also more interest of countries and governments to open up on in those areas.
Okay, there was a question here from the audience. I do hope, Sean, you were the one who posted any examples of frugal innovation specific to logistics. Matthias has just given some examples. If you're not satisfied, then do follow up that question, but I do hope it got answered by Matthias. We'll wait, or we'll skip that for Sean and see how he reacts to that response of yours, Matthias. But let's move on and quickly take a look at the logistics trend radar, Matthias. Has COVID-19 shifted some of these trends to a near term or vice versa from your perspective?
I think it's too early to tell, but I think you already see that what I just mentioned, the analytics topic already was really in our latest edition, and that's probably become even more impact. I think in terms of it's already pretty dominant IoT as well. So I don't think necessarily. I think the only thing is maybe we said earlier the question on autonomous deliveries, autonomous transport, which might shift, but it also might not. So to be honest, not significantly. So some are kind of I think accelerating a little bit faster. So they probably move more to the less than 5-year horizon. Mm-hmm. But there's certainly a few topics. Also on the sustainability topic, what Fred said, I think we see there's a higher, I would say, sensitivity to the topic, and how far it's going to last. Maybe ask me next year. So.
Okay, we'll keep on looking at that one and monitoring. As you say, it's a living dynamic too. So we will see how the movements on these trends come about in the next coming months.
And we are publishing a new version of the trend radar in September. So I think we will include many of those learnings in that edition.
Oh, fantastic. We look forward to that. In September is the Logistics Trend Radar 5.0, if I'm not mistaken. Piak, what would be your key innovation focus in the DHL global forwarding business in the next 12 months to support your customers? You've just demonstrated some of the innovations you've done to accommodate or attend to the needs of the customers now. What will you continue?
Well, Celeste, like what I just mentioned, right? Some of the innovation is forced out of the heart. No one can predict COVID-19, right? But when it happens, we innovate and create our dedicated charter networks and so on. But I think as a company as a whole, right, be it COVID or not COVID, I think we as a company, we wanted to provide more alternative solution for our customers. In the traditional mode of transportation, people always talk about air freight and slower. When you can afford to move slower, you go on ocean freight, right? But we are always looking at solution to create the in-betweens. Not only because the in-between can help our customer to control the cost, but actually it's also like what Fred has already mentioned. These are more of the sustainable solutions, right? If you're talking about using railway, it helped to achieve our company goal of going green and reducing our carbon emission as well. So I think as a company and as a business, right, freight forwarding business, we're always looking at the alternative mode so that we can give the customers more options in terms of saving costs and also a greener option, right, in order to help our customers.
Fantastic. All right, we do have a question that just came in terms of talent. Where should we hire innovation talents from, and what skill sets do my employees need to have post COVID-19? I think that could be a Matthias or a Piak question in this one. Talents in innovation. Yes.
I mean, I'm sure Fred has something to add as well. So from my perspective, I think it's interesting to see that if you particularly as like bigger companies like ours, it's actually an interesting market right now because there's a lot of smaller companies and startups that are in trouble. So they even websites out there that really kind of listing all the layoffs and all the startups. If you look at in the US, for example, I mean, there are hundreds of people that were let go in Uber and other companies, certainly very talented people. So as bad as that situation is for them, I think it's really something, opportunity where you can see there's a lot of talent in the market, you know. Again, but that would mean you have to invest ahead of the curve, right? That means you really have to invest and hire talent now and not wait until the crisis is over. And I think it's really, the skill sets are around the trends that we talked earlier. It's really about analytics, it's about AI, and then in our case, also about understanding the supply chains. So that would be, I don't know, Fred and Piak, I'm sure you guys have something to add, but that would be my 5 cents on that.
I think
all the innovation talent sit in our innovation centers, right? I think that's where.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely, fantastic.
Actually, joke aside, I don't think there's such thing as the innovation talents. To be very frank, I think innovation comes from everyone. People that has experience, people that deal with the business on the day-to-day basis, right? Once they see the problem, and anyone can innovate and create new solutions. I think this is what I firmly believe. I don't believe that there will be a school of innovation whereby you can find innovation talents. I think innovation need to come from everyone. People that has experience.
But I would say, Piak, to that, you have to have the right mix of people and experience, right? So people with a lot of industry experience, but also people coming in fresh with a new look on it. So I think you have to, it's not about the innovation talent, it's more about you want to bring in certain people that have a certain knowledge and skill set, maybe in analytics or in IoT and others, and then combining that with the people who understand the industry. I think that creates a dynamic that can create innovation.
Sure. I think I cannot disagree to that, right? You need a certain skill sets, right?
Fred, is there anything you wish to add from your perspective in Forrester talent innovation?
No, I think both Matthias and Piak had really good things to say. I think, but it's starting with your own employee base. I think there's a lot of wealth in that employee base that few companies are actually leveraging. So I would start there and then look at outside as well to complement what you lack.
Oh, fantastic. I think from here onwards, we would like to pause and reflect on what you've just all said. Thank you so much for giving us a picture of what post-COVID-19 will look like and how each company can adapt and really thrive with the crisis that is going on or will pass hopefully very soon, and that we are open to dialogue for anyone who's interested to keep on exploring the innovation topics, whether it's within the operation or for your future strategy. We will be happy to hear from you. Thank you to all the speakers that we have. Apart from this session that we just did right now, we will also have, or we will be talking about visibility. So track and trace for next week on June 24, same time at 1 p.m. We will also have analytics, so augmenting human decision making in supply chain on the 1st of July. So that's very interesting. Do watch out for that one. Matthias said before IoT, it actually first needs to have data in place. And then the next generation wireless on July 15th. So speaking of next generation wireless, do download our latest trend research report on next gen wireless, which was just launched on Monday. In addition, we are also having our virtual workshops. So if you're interested to explore how this innovation can help you in the challenging times, do reach out to us. We have our discovery workshops. You can also talk to our experts to talk about the different trends that we have. And of course, we are looking forward to collaborating with you. If you do have questions and wish to connect with us, do reach out to Chuan, our innovation manager, and also to Matthew Lee, our customer engagement lead, who can walk you through those different workshops that we are offering. From here onwards, I would like to thank Piak. Thank you very much for your insight. Matthias, lovely to hear from you again, and we hope to see you in Singapore very soon. And of course, Fred from Forrester Research, for this lovely session. I learned a lot from you, and I look forward to hearing from you again soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.